So first of all, let's focus on value proposition. I think this is the most important thing to understand, and the most important thing that I kind of think of when I try to define a new vertical, when I try to think of a new segment in our products. And the first question I ask is like, what's the value proposition and what's the hard value proposition? And what the hell is this differentiation between hard and soft value proposition? So so usually when you talk about value proposition, then this is something that we offer to the customer in exchange for the money, whether direct money or whether through their attention, which we then monetize somehow differently. But this is what we offer to the customer. And one big problem I've seen is that people tend to think like, hey, well, when I ask like a startup, what's your value proposition? They say, well, our interface is better than the competitor. And I ask, how is it better? And they're like, well, it's like, it's faster, it's prettier. So, but my problem is that I just don't see this as like a true value proposition. And so what I started doing, I started separating value proposition into hard value proposition and soft value proposition. Hard value proposition is something that is highly measurable. Usually you can literally attach a metric or like a few metrics to it, and it has a direct impact on customer satisfaction, right? It's something, it's like money. If we give the people money, and then if we give them more money, they'll be probably happier, right? Or like if we give them time or like something very specific. I'll go in more detail a little later. And soft value prop is basically everything else. There is a lot of stuff that we can do to improve to improve the stuff that we're doing, but like it's less measurable. It's usually secondary. And what I like about it, that unlike other frameworks that I've seen, like Kano framework, jobs to be done, UX, kind of what they call goal-directed design, which all have like kind of elements of that, but this is really good at focusing on teams, at what matters. And this is super important in the early stage product, because you really, you need to quickly create a lot of value for your customers to really create a good kind of relationship with your customers to build the market. And so the faster you can do it, the better it is. And focusing on hard value propositions is the best way to achieve it quickly. So so this is an example. So like I think that 80% of your energy early on has to go to this hard value proposition, and 20% may go to the other to the soft one. And so hard value proposition is typically price. If you can offer the same thing that the users already have but cheaper, that's always great value proposition. Revenue, if you can create something that boosts the customer top line, that's always strong value proposition. It doesn't matter if it's a business or a consumer. Like this is more B2B typical, consumer typical, that you just make things cheaper for them. In B2B, more typical is you give revenue, saving costs. That can apply to both consumer and B2B. Like if you basically somehow reduce costs, and a lot of like e-commerce is a great example of that. Literally drives down costs by reducing price that you pay, right? So price and costs are very often the same for consumers, but maybe even different for business, because there's direct what you pay for the software versus or like whatever product versus what you actually affect on bottom line might have. Time saved and goals achieved, right? So if I have some goals and the software enables me to achieve those goals faster or better or like whatever, that can also be hard value proposition. And soft is, and this is so funny because like innovation is kind of almost a dirty word at Bolt, because we're not seeking innovation. We're not seeking innovation itself. We're seeking customer value, and innovation is often a path to customer value. But very often a path to customer value is just executing well on a few very basic things, and it's much better to invest into that than into innovation. User experience can sometimes bring out hard value proposition, or it can support it. But a lot of kind of user experience stuff is, again, it's kind of secondary, especially in early and new products, and they're not critical. Like, again, some basic things need to be gotten right, but like having a great UX is rarely critical to the success unless your product hard value proposition something to do with some goals achieved, and for that you need a great user experience. Same with brand most often is soft value proposition, unless you're building like a really premium luxury products where brand is actually a primary value proposition, right? And then it's measurable, it's important, and then the situation flips. So none of this is as usually in building in entrepreneurship and so on. Nothing is ever completely fixed in stone, but this is kind of the high level framework that I used to think about it. And so when we take, for example, ride hailing, which is something that obviously is well known, well understood nowadays, and it has only 3 qualities that are hard value proposition. It's price, it's how much you pay for your ride, it's ETA, how quickly you get your ride, and it's quality. And the quality here means like how new is the car, how rude is the driver, and so on. Like it's all to do with the actual physical experience. And what is great if you just focus, and here like quality is actually, it's a threshold. Beyond certain point you get diminishing returns, so you need a good enough quality, and then you can purely, like, any improvements to ETA and price is basically like improvement in hard value proposition for the customer. And when we look at soft, and there's a lot of stuff that sounds really cool, but in reality doesn't matter, and we still don't have it, and it's okay. Like pooling, like it seems like really innovative, really logical, really great story, but it's also and pooling meaning like if you basically have already people going from point A to point B, like why don't we pull the rides together and put more people in each ride? Like when you dig deep into it, then it sounds really cool. It sounds really great idea, but it has a lot of issues where it actually does not drive the hard value proposition up. Like it's quite theoretically should drive down the price, but in reality, the density you need for that it makes it like really, really hard to sustain in most places. Then user experience, where you have things like split fare, which is basically people can just manage it among themselves. And like it's really, when your product is really mature, then you start turning your attention to things like that. Okay, like we've shared the ride together, and now we have to split the fare. Like okay, I'm gonna transfer, you have the money. Like the transfer UX is really good right now, so like it's not a terribly important bit to worry. Like people can do it, and same with brand, right? So this is kind of the example of ride hailing, where we have few things which we can measure really, really well, and then everything else by default falls into soft. And when we run out of the ability to drive value of leverage in the hard value proposition, then of course we focus on the soft, because it's not that you can't, but soft is almost always optimization, and like hard, which is almost always like where you really can drive a lot of new value.